Hey, my name is Lester Spence. I'm an assistant professor at Johns Hopkins University. I specialize in racial politics, black politics, urban politics, and public opinion. I just submitted my first book-length manuscript entitled Staring the Darkness, Rap, Hip Hop, and Black Politics early in the month, and I'm now at work on my next major project, which deals with the neoliberal turn in black politics. What I thought I'd do in my stint in BlackProf is shift our conversation in two different ways. One way is more of the mode of conversation, how we engage. And you can see the difference already. You're actually watching this as opposed to reading this on the screen. I think that BlackProf has done an excellent job and should be commended for bringing the viewpoints of black academics, such as myself, into contact with a wider public. I think video is the next step, and it's something that I'm working on myself, and I thought I'd port it over here, so to speak. The other turn I thought we'd make, or I thought I'd like to, or I'd like to make rather, is that I'd like to see us talk more about what we want our country to look like going forward. There's been a marked emphasis on electing Obama. I mean, to a certain extent here, but in other places in the black blogosphere. And I think that's been important, in as much as he's the first black president, and given that the last two elections were really tampered or were really altered by vote suppression, right? So I think those things are really, really important. And I want to urge everybody to go out and vote, make sure they tell everybody else they know to vote, stay in line and whatnot. But for me, this election is a lock. I mean, to be really, really blatant about it, Obama's going to beat McCain like he stole something. Like he stole something, right? It's not even going to be close. Yes, there'll be some whites who'll be in the poll and you'll be like, oh, Obama, McCain. But see, I told you video's dope, and uh, but I don't think that number is going to be enough to overturn the election in McCain's favor. He's been a really, really bad candidate, but more important than that, the economic philosophy that he's laid his hat on, they don't work, and everybody can see them, right? Everybody can see them because everybody's feeling the effect of them. So I'm actually thinking that it's going to be a blowout. So to that extent, we should be focusing on what we do next, what because it's not about just electing Obama. It's never been about just electing Obama. It's about the call for black political power wasn't just about putting black people in informally white spaces. It was about creating a new mode of governance, and that's what our task is. Given that Obama's tendency is going to be to vote from a center left axis or center left position, and he's going to be driven hard by neoliberals. What we have to do is figure out what we want and push him more in our direction. So one thing to think about, given the nature of this website, all academics who blog from BlackProf were actually associated with colleges and universities. Colleges and universities are basically the engine that drives the nation as far as providing intellectual capital from which innovation is derived, right? So like the Google guys, I think the Google guys went to Michigan. They don't go to Michigan, arguably we wouldn't have Google today, right? So one way to think about it is to think about making college tuition at public schools free, right? So what if we tasked Obama and what I presume will be a Democratic Congress to pass something like a modern day GI Bill that would make, perhaps in exchange for service, all public college tuition free. You give us service, you don't have to pay to go to school. My wife and I have 5 children. The academic language for this is we is what I tell folks is we've been incredibly productive. We've got 5 children, oldest 14, youngest 4. And the biggest thing hanging over our heads is we firmly believe that it's our responsibility to pay for our kids' college tuitions. How many of us know people like ourselves who could have been where we are, those of us who are professionals and whatnot, but because they weren't able to go to college, and it wasn't a matter of them not being smart enough, but because they weren't able to go to college, or because they were able to go to college, but they weren't able to continue because they had to work 3, 4, 5 jobs to sustain it. They ended up not being able to live up to their capacity, and we all end up suffering, right? We all end up suffering. So, what I like to suggest is that we begin a conversation on these types of issues. So, one critique of this type of policy is, well, if we all of a sudden did this, well, toss the socialist stuff, put that to the side. But if I could hear someone saying, well, if we all of a sudden did this, where are we going to get the money from? We're going to further bankrupt the nation. And that's actually understandable. But but there are two things to consider. One is that there are certain types of priorities that we always seem to find money for without having the bankrupt the nation conversation, right? So when we decided to invade Iraq, there was no discussion on, oh wow, we don't really have the money for this. We're gonna further bankrupt our nation. We should think about spending our. We should think about engaging in some other mode of conflict resolution here because we're just broke. We never saw it. We never had that conversation, right? And now we're spending $10 billion a month, right? We did not. We never had, or we had a limited conversation about the bailout. I mean, which I support to a certain extent. But it's like, wow, $700 billion. Where'd that come from? We never had a conversation like, okay, wait a second. We've got a number of different priorities. Why are we using it here? Right? We never had that conversation. So it's only for certain types of priorities that all of a sudden money becomes an issue. So that's one thing. But the second thing I like to bring up is that funding, given what we're already spending, funding funding college tuition or making college tuition free or making that an entitlement, right? Yeah, I said the word entitlement. Making it an entitlement would only cost what? Yeah. How much do you think it would cost? 150? No. Two what? 125? No. 75 billion dollars. No. 50 billion dollars. No. College tuition and fees for everyone eligible or interested will cost approximately $25 billion. $25 billion. But instead of looking at it as a cost, think about it as an investment. So if we thought about this as an investment, how much would we get back? Well, looking at the GI Bill, which will kind of be the model, according to people who did studies on the GI Bill, for every dollar you put in to the GI Bill, every dollar we put in as taxpayers, we got $7 back as far as taxes individuals paid and increased productivity. So that's like a no-brainer, right? That's really a no-brainer. So how do we get the will? No, let me ask this another way. How can we make it such that the new president and his new Congress views this as a priority? How do we do that? We don't do it by talking about, for example, who's, once he gets elected, who's he going to have for his cabinet? Is he going to have more black people for his cabinet? We don't do that by talking at this late stage about, well, we better make sure he's elected first. No, we do that by having discussions in places like this, and we do that by putting pressure on our elected representatives, including Obama. And we do that by wanting it and claiming it, right? So I'm going to end here, and then in our next conversation, I'll talk about other ideas, and to a certain extent, to the extent I can, I'll try to respond to some of your comments, and hopefully we can use this space to have a really rich conversation about what our cities start to look like, about what our nation's going to look like going forward, because it's all on us. Thanks.